Good evening. On behalf of the commissioners and staff, I'd like to welcome you to the March 10th, 2022 City of Roseville Planning Commission meeting. Agendas are available at the end of the staff table. If you plan to speak at tonight's meeting, complete a blue speaker card and return it to the staff table. And as a reminder, the Planning Commission meetings are broadcast live and replayed throughout the week on Consolidated Communications and Comcast. I'll now call the meeting to order. Mackenzie, could I please have a roll call?
Yes. Commissioner Brashears? Commissioner Caparuso?
Here.
Commissioner Covington? Here. Commissioner Hagenjos?
Here.
Commissioner Pryor?
Here.
Vice Chair Martin?
Here.
And Chair Jensen.
Here. If you could all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Could we begin with staff introductions?
Yes. Good evening, Commissioners. This is Mackenzie Harrison, Recording Secretary.
Good evening, Commissioners. Joe Speaker, Assistant City Attorney.
Good evening, Chair Jensen and Commissioners. Greg Bitter, Planning Manager.
Good evening, Lauren Hawker, Senior Planner.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and begin with public comment. The public comment period is the time for anyone who would like to address the Commission on any item that is not on tonight's agenda. When addressing the Commission, please state your name for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the comment period, public comment period, and move on to the consent calendar. The consent calendar consists of routine items that may be approved under one motion as recommended in the staff report. However, each item may be considered separately upon a request by the audience, Planning Commission, or staff. Tonight's consent calendar consists of one item, item 5.1, the meeting minutes from February 24th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting. Is there anyone on the Commission that would like to have that item pulled for discussion? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Second.
Motion and a second. Could we have roll call, please?
Yes. Commissioner Pryor?
Yes.
Commissioner Covington?
Yes.
Commissioner Hagenjos?
Yes.
Commissioner Caparuso?
Abstain.
Vice Chair Martin?
Abstain.
Chair Jensen.
Yes. Okay, moving on to requests and presentations. Before we begin, I want to go through the meeting procedures. First, we'll hear the staff presentation. Then we'll take questions from the Commission. Then I'll open up the public hearing and the public comment period to allow the public an opportunity to speak. We'll then close the public comment period, and then staff will be given an opportunity to respond to questions that may have come up. We'll close the public hearing, look for additional questions or comments from staff, and then finally we'll look to the Commission to make a motion regarding the project. So item 6.1 is a request to recommend that the City Council approve the ordinance amendment to Title 19 to the Roseville Municipal Code, and that the Planning Commission review and comment on the ordinance amendment to Title 18 of the Roseville Municipal Code. For the record, it's file number PL 21-0334. With that, Lauren, could we have your presentation, please?
Yes. Good evening, everyone. So my name is Lauren Hawker, and Chair and Commission, I'm here to present to you tonight the city-initiated zoning and subdivision ordinance amendments. Every year for the last several years, the state has passed various laws affecting housing-related and planning-related government code. And we expect that to be a trend that will continue for a while. And so each year we need to bring forward ordinance amendments responding to those bills. So among those bills passed this year, or this last year, were Assembly Bill 345, Senate Bill 290, and Senate Bill 9. And I'm just going to go over this. The details of all of this are in your staff report, but I'm just going to cover these briefly. So Assembly Bill 345 deals with the sale of accessory dwelling units. And basically what it says is that if a nonprofit built or developed either a primary unit or an accessory dwelling unit on a site, and they are going to sell the ADU as deed-restricted affordable housing, then we need to permit the sale of the ADU. So currently, Chapter 19.60 of the zoning ordinance prohibits all sales. So we need to modify that to allow this very narrow exception where a sale can be made. Then Senate Bill 290 deals with density bonus ordinance changes. Honestly, we've seen bills amending density bonus provisions every year for the past several years. This one is the amendments are pretty minor. The only semi-notable one is that there is now a new parking reduction to half a space per unit for moderate income units if they are meeting certain locational criteria, so proximity to high-quality transit. Previously, that parking reduction was available only for lower income units. So we need to change the city's density bonus ordinance, Chapter 19.28, to reflect those revisions. And then the most significant bill passed in 2021 was Senate Bill 9. So Senate Bill 9, what that does is it says that for lots in a single-family zone, you are now permitted to have 2 primary units per lot, and you can have a ministerial 2-lot parcel map subject to certain criteria. When I say a ministerial map, I mean that you do not need an entitlement for a parcel map. And when we say single-family zones in the city, we're talking about the city's R1 zone, which is our standard single-family zone, and the RS zone, which is the residential small lot single-family zone. And then the 2-lot, so for all of these, there are criteria to be allowed to have 2 units or this 2-lot ministerial parcel map. The list of criteria is long, and again, the details are in your staff report, but this table is a very brief summarized version of that. So to be permitted to have 2 units on a lot, first of all, it can't require the demolition or alteration of any housing that's been occupied by a tenant within the last 3 years. The house or the property can't be on a historic register or within a historic district, and it can't have any one of any number of a long list of environmental constraints. To get a 2-lot parcel map, those same criteria I just listed apply, plus each lot has to be approximately equal in size. It has to be no more than a 40-60 split. And each lot has to be at least 1,200 square feet. So we needed to modify the zoning ordinance to allow 2 primary units in the R1 and the RS zone, plus add the list of criteria that you have to meet in order to qualify for that. And we also needed to modify the subdivision ordinance to create an entirely new ministerial mapping process, as well as amend related sections like the hearing authority. And so, as I mentioned, all the details are in your staff report on those changes, and we have red lines of the zoning ordinance and the subdivision ordinance attached. So the other thing we're bringing forward is changes related to Housing Element Program 16, and this is the Prioritize Affordable Housing Program. What that does is committed to streamlining for parcel maps, lot line adjustments, and voluntary mergers for affordable housing projects. So that means a project where at least 20% of the units are affordable to lower income households. And the reason we were looking at that is because it makes property consolidation and phasing easier. It's pretty common that an affordable housing project may also need like a lot line adjustment or to merge 2 parcels or even to subdivide 2 parcels so that they can do financing and phasing more easily. And now that we have a ministerial design review process, if you have a project that qualifies for the objective design standards process, having also a ministerial map process means they wouldn't suddenly need an entitlement just because this affordable project needs to move a lot line slightly. So again, we needed to make changes in the subdivision ordinance to reflect this new ministerial mapping process. And when we brought forward this program through the Housing Element last December, we had actually received some complimentary comments from Commission at the time on having this streamlining program for affordable housing. So we've actually been talking about these changes for a while now. As I mentioned, we talked about it with you at Commission as we were bringing the housing element forward, and the housing element was adopted in August of 2021. And then as the legislative session was ongoing and there was a lot of community discussion about Senate Bill 9 and what that might mean, we prepared a general information memo and published that in September of 2021. As well as had any number of conversations with community groups and stakeholders who were calling us to inquire about what this would mean for them. And then in November of 2021, we released another memo talking about Senate Bill 290 and Assembly Bill 345, as well as some other bills. And then in December of last year, we were before this commission to talk about these very amendments, just to give you some background and to let you know that these amendments were going to be coming this year. And then once we had a good understanding of what changes we needed to make, we put up a notice in the first week of February on Arcona, noticing about the project itself. And then, of course, we also published all of the usual hearing notices. And we did receive one comment on the project or on these amendments that was complimentary this evening. So, in conclusion, the proposed changes bring the city's regulations into consistency with enacted state law, which we already have to comply with, and with the city's adopted general plan housing element. So at this time, the Planning Division is recommending, the Planning Commission recommend, City Council adopt the 2 findings of fact and approve the zoning ordinance amendments. And then because Planning Commission is not listed as a hearing authority for the subdivision ordinance, we are recommending that you review and comment on the subdivision ordinance amendments, and then if you have any comments, we'll pass those onward to City Council. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any comments you may have at this time.
Thank you, Lauren. Commission, is there any questions you have of staff at this time? We'll start at this end.
I have a quick question on AB 345, allowing the sale of accessory dwelling units by nonprofits. What happens to the accessory dwelling unit after it's sold? Can it be further sold then by the person who purchased it? Can the purchaser be a nonprofit or a for-profit person? And what are the entitlements that they get?
So there's no entitlement for it. It's just that there would be, like any affordable housing, there would be a recorded deed restriction associated with that. I think Joe could possibly speak to this more.
So there is a deed restriction. There's a requirement for deed restriction. There's also under the statute a requirement. The concept behind it would be that it's sold with the tenant. That's often the scenario. So there's another provision in the statute that requires that the tenant and any other tenants create a contract, or they create what's called a tenancy in common situation. So they'll handle that through the deed. And the statute actually goes into very detail about how they divide up the land and who gets what and what part of the property and how that property interacts with the main dwelling. So there's like this very, very regimented process for after it's sold. And it essentially makes it, and this isn't in the statute, but it essentially makes it unmarketable for a future sale because of the deed restriction, because of the limitations on how that particular site can be used. The main focus of that statute is to allow for the creation of an affordable housing unit and to allow that unit to be sold off separate from the primary dwelling. But it restricts pretty severely what can be done with it in the future.
So what happens with the purchaser? Can they pass it on in their will to somebody, or
so if it's
stuck with it, or?
So that would be spelled out in the tenancy in common situation, and generally in that situation, the answer is no. But I don't know that the legislature thought that far ahead with regard to the statute. So it would be unclear what would happen in that situation, because that tenancy in common situation and the way the statute is worded, it's very much contractual between the parties. So it would end up being very case by case specific based on the nature of the contractual relationship between the primary dwelling, the accessory dwelling, and then any tenants in common on the accessory dwelling. And so under the normal tenancy in common situation, it would probably be unlikely that it would pass through a will to somebody else. But again, it would be very, very fact specific to that individual transaction, if that answers your question.
And the deed restriction does require that the dwelling is preserved for low-income housing for 45 years. So there's a 45-year requirement on that.
And that's what I was getting at earlier, that it's so regimented that it makes it very difficult for it to pass either through a sale or through another, like you said, a will or some other death, and then meet the criteria of the statute and the deed restriction. And so that's why, and again, the statute doesn't comment specifically on it, but the idea would generally be because of the deed restriction, it would likely revert back if it wasn't met. So it would be very difficult to hit that very regimented requirement in the statute down the line.
I can't see the purpose of selling it by a nonprofit. What would be the advantage of purchasing such a property?
I think part of the thought process is a funding mechanism. I think that was one thought process so that, if you had a situation where you have a primary dwelling, then you have an accessory to make it an opportunity for funding mechanism by way of sale of the other, so long as it's used still for that affordable housing purpose. That was one, I think that's one of the intentions behind it.
Okay.
Okay, I did have one question before we open it up to the public, and this is just a clarifying question because I've had this question asked me by my neighbors. The way I understand it is to do a lot split, you end up having to have equal size lots in order to put the second home. And looking at the majority of the homes in Roseville, 60 by 100 postage stamp type lots, and usually the front 70 feet of that goes to the back of the house in the front yard, so your 30 feet is in the backyard. So the reality of someone being able to come in and split that lot to do a second unit, this does not allow for that to occur, correct?
Yeah, looking at the lots in the city, you're correct that most of our lots, because we allow smaller lots and the houses are usually centered on the lot, most of the lots, you're not going to be able to split the lot and create two even lots. The split would happen in the middle of the house, and that's not permitted.
Yeah, and so where this may happen, though, is the older area of Roseville where we've got the 150-foot deep lots,
Yes.
where the homes are up in the front. That might be an option there, but for the majority of the city, I can tell my neighbors there's not going to be a lot split in the second unit in their backyard.
Yeah, I would agree. In the majority of the city, this just isn't feasible.
Okay, thank you. Okay, with that, I'll go ahead and open it. Oh, yes.
So I just want to approach this from the standpoint of a neighbor, of somebody desiring to do this, and it's the particular lot potentially is feasible for it to happen.
Sure.
I'm a neighbor, and I don't like what my neighbor is doing, and I'm thinking that they don't necessarily meet the criteria. What's the process by which I can raise my voice with all of this?
Well, if you don't believe they're meeting the criteria, a call to the city to verify whether or not they are meeting the criteria would be the mechanism. But if city staff determine that they do meet the criteria, the lot split is creating parcels that have a minimum of 1,200 square feet. You're not creating a parcel that's any less than 40% of the original parcel. There's another one Lauren didn't mention. The law does prohibit serial or adjacent parcel splits. So if you own 4 parcels in a row, you can take advantage of SB 9 on one of those parcels, not all 4, and that is an in perpetuity type situation where we would monitor that. But if they meet the criteria, there is no opportunity for the city doesn't have discretion at that point.
Gotcha. Okay, and
that's the ministerial process is here are the standards.
If you meet
the standards,
you're good to go.
You're good to go.
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, with that, I'll go ahead and open up to the public. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and close the public comment period, and we'll go ahead and close the public hearing as well. Commissioners, are there any questions or comments for staff before I look for a motion? Okay, seeing none, do I have a motion?
I'll move to recommend City Council adopt the 2 findings of fact and approve the ordinance amendment to Title 19 of the Roseville Municipal Code and review and comment. Well, we don't need to, I guess, do we need to say that? Yeah.
No.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please, Mackenzie.
Commissioner Covington?
Yes.
Vice Chair Martin?
Yes.
Commissioner Pryor?
Yes.
Commissioner Caparuso?
Yes.
Commissioner Hagen-Jost?
Yes.
And Chair Jensen?
Yes. Okay, the motion passes, and this is just a recommendation to the council. Do we know when that will go to the council?
Yes, April 6th.
Okay, thank you.
April 6th.
Okay, next on the agenda is the commissioners and staff report. Are there any items you have, Greg?
Just a couple quick items. We do have items lined up for the next 2 meetings, March 24th and April 14th. I think we have 3 items in 2 weeks lined up for you, and at least a couple items in April. And I'll mention, I think we mentioned it at the end of the last meeting. We are moving forward, and I think we'll. I'm not sure if I know I didn't send you the staff report, but we are moving forward with the pro-housing designation. We're applying to the state Housing and Community Development Department for the pro-housing designation. I don't know if anybody saw, but the city of Sacramento was the first jurisdiction in the state to receive that, to be awarded the pro-housing designation. one of the benefits, there aren't any new programs that we're putting in place with this. We're just cataloging some of our existing policies in the housing element, some of the existing practices of our housing division, and other items such as what you just adopted, that we are a jurisdiction that has pro-housing policies. That goes to council next Wednesday. The important, I guess the most important impact that could have is it does allow some of the affordable housing developers additional points on their tax credit applications. So it puts them in a more competitive position than jurisdictions that don't have the pro-housing. So that will be going to council next week. Just another on the long list, and you're going to be seeing more housing-related ordinances, policies. I think I've mentioned this ad nauseum over the last 6 months or so, but this is going to be the year of a lot of housing items. But that's just another one, just so you're aware that that's going to council.
Land use policy.
Oh, and we are working on I think this was in one of our workshops, but if you recall when we did the housing element, we all recognized that our housing element was adopted and certified by the state with a deficit of land for low and very low income and extremely low income housing. And we came to the Planning Commission and we went to City Council and we looked at we provided different opportunities. I think we call it the list of unpalatable alternatives, things that we don't necessarily, policies we wouldn't necessarily advise implementing in normal times, but because we have a deficit of affordable housing in our housing element that we need to make up by 2024, we're starting to work on some of those policies. So one of them is our projects in the new specific plan areas for property owners requesting specific plan amendments. If they also control high density housing, asking them to increase the densities up to either 25 units per acre or 30 units per acre, depending on what the base density is. So that we're working on that policy. We've done outreach with BIA on that, and since that's already been discussed and it was on one of the top. Near the top of the list of the City Council kind of recommended housing implementation policies. We'll probably be taking that directly to City Council, but we will send you the policy early on, just so you can be aware of it.
I think the plan was to bring it to Planning Commission in April.
Oh, then you're going to see it in April. I think we bounced back and forth on some of this, on how to, yes.
I just wanted to let you know, the April 14th meeting, that falls within Super Bowl week for the church. So I will be not able to attend. That's Monday, Thursday for
It took me a whole few minutes to.
I think that's spring break for the elementary school district, so I'll probably.
I think maybe then I should have Loopy poll you all for April 14th.
I can tell you I won't be here.
I won't be here.
So we can do a poll now, I think. Yeah. I don't think we have quorum.
I'll be here.
I'll be here.
Okay, 3.
All right. Well,
I'll check with Eric. Well, we'll figure it out. Yeah, we'll figure it out.
But thank you for high-signing us.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That'll help us plan for that date.
Commission, any questions of staff? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.